So, we're live. Welcome this 3rd of December, everyone, to a new virtual DDD, talking about does domain-driven design need a agile business? With me is Marco, and our guests today are Anton, Krisztina, and Trond.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome.
So, can you introduce yourself, Krisztina?
Oh, yes. Thank you. I am in development for 14 years now, and as I was thinking about this session, I realized I worked in every type of companies, but project development. I started with a small, not really full stack team, then in silos, then transformed these silos in so-called full stack teams, but not only halfway, only backend actually. And then we transformed it in a real product development organization. And after that, I was in a really small company with 3 developers, no team at all, but the whole company was a product team. And now I'm in the next position. I will say what kind of one, but a cool one. And so this is about my background.
Cool, thanks. Anton, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. I'm a software developer for about 22 years now, I think. I had a couple of positions in different companies. It all started more with web. I mean, back in the days, in end of last century. And in the last years, it got more, application stuff than websites. Maybe in the last second half of my career. I'm currently working for Maibon Wolf, a fantastic IT consulting company here in Munich, with very high people values. What can I add? Yeah, I started diving into DDD roughly 5 years ago, and I was soonish confronted with Matthias Varias. So you can imagine how tough that was. Joke aside. I think that's it about me for the time being.
Thanks. Trond.
Yeah, Trond here from Oslo, Norway, where I also work for currently work for a lovely small consulting firm called Sienta. I've actually have 20 years anniversary this year, so it's a happy me. So I started in '99. I've been doing programming most of the time, but in the last few years I've moved more into a sort of architecture type role in different companies. When I did program, I was an employee in a big enterprise, like a telecom enterprise in Norway. So I know a lot about complexity, but also that's where I encountered both domain-driven design first time and Agile. We started with XP in early 2000s, 2003, 2004 or something. And also started playing around with Scrum. That was before it was hijacked by management. So I know how it could have worked or should have worked now, but it doesn't. So I'm more familiar now with the dark Scrum thing, probably, like many others seems like. So I love to see how these two can combine, and I think they can play off each other a lot.
Yeah, because that's what this session is about, right? A while back, you tweeted about starting to think that doing sprints iteration without having a defined business goal impact outcome is more or less unnecessary theater. Maybe counterproductive, even harming your team and its progress.
Yeah.
Well, that's all that can fit in a tweet. So maybe you can elaborate a bit more.
Characters I can fit in, yes. Yeah, so the idea here is that, as probably many have experienced Scrum, I remember back in the days, I felt that it was something that really energized the team. It was something that we really enjoyed. But we did it based on what we wanted to do. It was self-organizing, which is how it's supposed to be done. But in the last few years, it has been, as I said, taken over by management maybe, and it's pushed down from top often, or at least middle management, saying, oh, we should all do Agile, and we should do that and this and that. And they copy patterns, for example, Spotify pattern is copied everywhere and all that. And you have managers turning into Scrum Masters and all that. It can work, but unfortunately I haven't seen it work, and not to play down where I'm at the moment, but we are trying to improve. And I noticed that we do Scrum, or at least people claim that we do Scrum, we do parts of it. And they're focused on, no, we have to all do 2-week sprints, for example, and we all have to do stand-ups, and we all have to do retrospectives, and follow the pattern without necessarily thinking of what's the need of those patterns. And sort of one eyesore for us has been the stand-up, because it's never really worked. It's been counterproductive, and people is annoyed, and you have to drag them into the room in order to say what they do. They have sort of status reporting. And I thought, we had the sprint goal thing. Shouldn't that be in here somewhere when we do planning? And I said, to think about, okay, if you don't have a sprint goal, why are we then doing sprints? Isn't that the whole idea with sprints, that we sort of all gather around some goal that we have, some outcome we want to reach, and then the sprints start making sense. And all the other patterns also start making sense. The stand-ups, as I said, start making sense. The planning, the time box, which is an enabler constraint, really, the sprint start making sense. And the retro makes everything start making sense then. So Scrum is not as bad as some people might think, but people are used to the bad version of Scrum. That's my idea. A long summary of that tweet, though, by the way.
You jumped into this, right, Anton? Saying you agree, but you can have 3 stories in a sprint that can be put under a sprint goal, except improved product. I always hated sprint goals because they were artificial. Can you elaborate on this part?
Yeah, it's funny because the same happened that always happens on Twitter with the limits of this medium. Complete basically misunderstanding, or not complete, but you're sort of missing each other closely, because I thought about it afterwards quite a lot. I worked in my last company where I worked 5 years, and it was a bigger company with multiple teams, and doing a transition from monolith to cloud, and had Scrum, and also, as you happen to know, Kenny, a little bit of SAFe. Hopefully we don't have to talk about that.
Sorry, what the reaction for everybody? It's like, ah!
Exactly. So I worked in, I would say it was not a dark Scrum, but a medium dark Scrum setup maybe. So it could have been much, much worse. And I'm sure there are companies out there where each of us would run away and scream or whatever, jump out of the window. So it was not that bad, but it was also, I think, not very good. So what happened with the sprint goals is exactly how I described it. They were basically just, we were sort of putting, or mostly the PO was driving, selecting the highest priority story from the sprint, and then trying to put that, or to write a sprint goal out of that. But then often you had 2, 3, 4 more stories in that sprint, which were basically unrelated. And a little by sentence, it also depends a lot on product phases. If you basically do something big new, so you're in a real big development phase, or you basically just iterate, add little things and make it a little better. So that varies it a bit. But back to the original topic, this artificial sprint goals. And the other thing which why it happened that it seemed that Trond and Krisztina basically disagree with me, or the other way around, was that I actually, when I say I don't need sprint goals, it would be better to say I don't need Scrum at all. I don't need sprints.
You said it.
For me, if whatever you call it, lean, Kanban-ish stuff, there was also the last mode I worked in that company with the semi-dark Scrum, works perfectly fine. And then it sort of gets very, very much the same as if you do good Scrum-based sprints with good sprint goals, where you actually focus on the next important thing. So when you do a lean Kanban mode, you pick the next, the highest story, or the next one in the backlog, and you work on that. And then if you do all the other things right in a real agile, we come a bit more to that, in a real agile way and an autonomous team way, then you will know why you work on that and what exactly you want to basically, which outcome you want to produce. So yeah, that was sort of the misunderstanding. And as most of the times on Twitter, eventually I wrote a couple of times, actually we agree. It took 2 or 3 more posts before I convinced Trond, I think, that we agree, but
yeah, I think we do.
So, but Krisztina went on there where, Krisztina, I think you said, well, we think we agree, but I don't think so. Is that still the case?
Yes, because we agree on goals, and we agree absolutely on focusing. And we agree that this 2 weeks or 1 week time box, this fixed time box doesn't have to be. This has only happened because of our managers and minute managers, and the idea or the dream that somebody can stop everybody to interact with the team because the team needs the time. Actually, I think in the last few years, these teams don't need any time anymore because they should have all these people in the team. I don't need extra team because, or extra borders, because if all the stakeholders all interested in this product are interacting with me, then I don't need to be guarded. So that I don't need this time box anymore, or this 2 weeks reservation time or something like this. If I'm working with the POs and with the stakeholders, we are understanding the same, we are using the same language, and we are building the same product. I do not write code and they do not make reports, but we are building a product that then it's not an interruption, but working together. So I don't need this time box anymore. But what I wasn't agree is saying Scrum is bad, or I don't need Scrum, or Scrum is something making harm. It's just like Twitter. Twitter doesn't make any harm because it has this character limit. Twitter brought us together. Twitter was a framework which brought us together to meet each other, to discuss this, and to put it and to take it further in such a session. Without Twitter, without this discussion, we never have came to this session. It's only a middle, a way to come together. And this is Scrum is the same. It's only a framework. Scrum is not defined. It's not it's nothing to do harm to us. It's only it displays things. It shows us what is wrong. Yeah, an hour ago, I just were reading a thread from Ron Jeffries. So he's writing exactly the same. Scrum makes transparent if something doesn't work. Yeah. You're looking at the board, and you see in one column 20 tasks, and you can ask 20 questions, but you see one thing: something is broken. And this is what Scrum helps, but Scrum won't say us what to see. We could see everything is fine, it's just as usual, or something is broken, or something is perfect. You can see 1,000 things. Scrum doesn't tell you what to see. And this is why Scrum is not it's against us. It is us who are using it falsely.
Yeah, okay.
So the title is actually, does geometry design need an agile business, right? And we talked a bit about Scrum. Scrum is a framework of Agile. What I've heard from, for instance, when you listen to Dave Snowden, he says, well, Scrum is more when you go from complex to complicated in that way, where it works. When you really follow Eric Evans' model exploration whirlpool, where there's a lot of iteration going on, and you want to have faster feedback because you don't know a lot. You have a lot of unknown, things change. So is Scrum actually always a good pick at the start, or is it because we try to do one size fit all? I think that let's start with that question. Like Scrum works everywhere in the company, or should teams be able to decide based on their domain they're in what to pick? Scrum, Lean, or any other agile framework? Actual agile frameworks.
Which size? At my last company, we changed the length of this period after a month. We changed it to 1 week, and then we changed it back to 2 weeks, and we changed it all the time because why not? It's our need said, okay, now we are want to step smaller, to have more baby steps. So we're making it for 1 week, and releasing features or something. We did it all the time, not at the end of the sprint, or we have it all the time. Scrum doesn't forbid this.
No. Exactly, I completely agree. And also, since you mentioned the Kinevin framework and the complexity, and Scrum or the time box is an enabling constraint. So if a team is working on a problem, they can set themselves a time box for how long they should work on it, and then say, okay, in the end of this time box, we want to see if we can discover this, or if we can test this, or we have a hypothesis, and he said the hypothesis doesn't even have to be scientific. It could just be just has to be coherent. So it has to make sense. Yeah. And then you can set a time box for yourself and say, oh, let's try that. And then you can, and I think Snowden says that it works in between the complicated and, between the complex and the complicated. It takes you from the complex domain into the complicated domain, the liminal phase, as he call it.
Can be, right?
Yeah, it can be, yeah. But what makes it probably less suited for complex is that you sort of plan ahead. You set a sprint backlog that you pick the tasks from. So you already have sort of set a direction, right, when you've done that. So that's why it doesn't really work in the complex domain itself, because you don't know yet. So you have to experiment more. So you need parallel experiments and all that. And for Scrum, it's only one. You linearize your direction immediately when you choose Scrum. And
is that usually the problem what you discussed at the start? Management are taking over because other people are doing Agile or Scrum, so they force it upon people. And now they open a blick of we call it a can of Agile coaches who just got their PSM1 in a day, right? They only know the process, so that's the only thing they will control on.
Yep, that's what they know.
Do you see that problem?
I see it constantly every day where I work. And I hear it from a lot of people that the new thing is Agile coach. That's the new thing everybody should become. And also, I mean, management here that from the coaches that they should not manage, they should be servant leadership, as they call it. But I think it's a hard transition for many. So they then fall back to what they know, and that is managed. So they do manage sprints, they do manage Scrum, they then manage people, and so they don't manage work either. They just manage people. And they call us resources, for example. So.
I want to reference something Anton said in the beginning. He said you have to ask for the why, for the reason behind stuff to do. And if you do sprints of 2 weeks and you have a good reason for it, for example, having it as an enabling constraint, or to protect the team from the influence of people who come in every day to force new work on you, it can be a very helpful thing. But then again, any framework you choose, or even if you don't pick a framework but just build your own process, there could be good reasons behind that. But to get back to the original question of does domain-driven design need an agile business? What would a domain-driven approach look like if you do not have an agile business? Like, what is the scenario of being not agile but doing domain-driven? Can you paint me a picture there?
Kafka, with a lot of Kafka and Broker.
Yeah. Technical stuff, yeah.
You always have a lot of Kafka nowadays, no matter how agile you are. So that's a fantastic question, Marco, because I'm not exactly very young in age and also in professional years, but I have never worked in a real waterfall environment ever, because I started with doing web stuff 20 years ago, and there you neither had waterfall nor agile of any sort. You just did something basically day by day. So maybe Trond or Krisztina have worked in some in companies that had waterfall. It's really hard for me to imagine that. I mean, you have your plan for a year or something, and maybe a year is even not complete mayhem, and some did planning 2 years or 5-year plan or whatever, I don't know. So by the logic of how waterfall works, I think this whole domain discovery, storytelling, what we do nowadays, all the modeling, strategic design would have happened before basically the 2-year plan was finished, and then people go and implement that. It sounds so weird. I can really not imagine that. But I probably could also not imagine that if I had never heard of DDD at all and would just do normal whatever software development without DDD. That's the part that's hard to say from my side. So maybe other opinions on that.
But you said you met SAFe. SAFe starts with create your backlog for your 3 months release.
Yeah.
This is waterfall. It is even waterfall. It is happening every 2 weeks, but you don't ask your customer. You don't release, but put it on review or stage or something.
Yeah, you're right. Just something you can't know because I think we haven't talked about SAFe. I did more chatting about the fantastic choo-choo train with Kenny. So in the company I used to work for, they only picked little elements of SAFe, or elements of SAFe, and not even at the same time. But the first thing we had was the fantastic PI planning, which is you lock 500 people in one room for 2 days minimum, and you put shitloads of paper cards on the wall, and then you connect them with strings, which we did so horribly bad that all the strings were hanging to the ground, so you couldn't even see the connection. So you're right that actually I did, only 3 times, sadly. It was a lot of fun. And that was sarcastic in case it was not clear. We did that 3 months planning, but it's still not as horrible probably as you plan a whole year, and you really can't do any reasonable modeling and strategic design, which the PI stuff did not hinder us, my team, to do useful things whenever this planning was over. So that's why I still think I cannot really imagine this world so much.
Well, it maybe hasn't got, you see it back there, but you also see it with non-SAFe and all these things. The essence of DDD is creating software models, creating models for creating software together with the business. And what I usually see in this planning session, and it doesn't need to be planning session, is if you want to do that, we need to be able to decide together or talk about it together. But usually I see it as IT as a factory. Yeah. Here are some backlog items you need to work on, and just do it. So and getting back to your first point of a sprint goal, what I usually see in lots of teams, they're working on several small application that has no connection, real connection. It can be a Kafka stream, so we need to do Kafka. So it's all based on technical stuff. And isn't that the core issue here with, does domain-driven design approach need that agile business where you work together? Yeah.
I can paint a little bit of a picture how waterfall works, because I've probably been mostly working in waterfalls. As I said, in a big enterprise, that's what they know. And they have been, as I said, we tried Scrum in mid-2000, but the company is still not sort of moving into Agile, even though they claim that they are. So it's more of they have 1-year budgets. They plan every project for 1 year ahead. They call in or call in consultants. Everybody, it's staff, top staff with management and project managements and technical project managements and architects, and they all do this work up front. And I actually, back in the 2000 when I worked in the middleware, we never saw the customer. We never knew who the customer was really. We never saw the domain expert. We never knew who the business was. We just got handed assignments, and that was do this and do that. So this is, as you said, Kenny, this is a feature factory, right? We barely knew what the feature was. We just, okay, we have to solve our little part in the whole value chain, but that's it. Yeah. So it's a very functional layer, right? The teams were very functional. So it's not cross-functional at all. Yeah. So I couldn't work with domain-driven design in that context. It didn't apply. We could do, what we did was trying out some of the technical patterns, because that's what we could do, but not the rest. We were not able to discover an ubiquitous language or just look at boundaries like bound context, because they were outside of our reach, if you like. Because we were just a peg in the whole system.
I think that's why basically companies did waterfall, or still do, and maybe with SAFe we get a bit more revenge of the, what was it, P something, because they want feature factories. They do this, make this plan. And when I studied computer science, I learned there is this basically folders of, documentation, Lastenheft and Pflichtenheft. I don't know what's that in English. So that when you have that plan, which took you, I don't know, 3 months, half a year, and then you can put it to the sweatshop. It doesn't matter so much if the developers are in Germany and know where the right end of the keyboard is, or they are in some other country and don't understand what you're saying and always say just yes because it's their culture, whatever. So you have something, some specification, you give it to the sweatshop, and magically the software will fall out of that. So that's completely not how DDD works. And it's
software engineering.
Or software engineering, yes.
No, you have never tried that, Kenny, right? You're too young for that.
I would say that totally depends on the grade of complexity. When you're in an obvious space, then of course you can write a specification. People can implement it no matter where, because when it's obvious, you can write down a page of description and people can follow. But that's not where domain-driven design shines. So we don't use big analysis, collaboration patterns, agile methodologies when we have an obvious problem that just needs busy hands to solve. That's when you do waterfall, actually, and there's a good case for that. We approach domain-driven design, I think, when it gets really complex or complicated, when you need to have an understanding of the business side, linguistically and behaviorally. And I think the same mindset that is behind domain-driven design also enables the agile mindset. So the idea that people learn through iteration and through linguistic approaches, through collaboration over time by getting more trust and more communication going, it's the reason why you can't just define how the domain works. You can't just have one event storming, everything settled. You need to model and model deeper and deeper and deeper every time you get new insights. And I'm not saying Scrum, but Agile in general, like iterations and having collaboration over the other part. So all those things are based on the same ideas. Whatever drives domain-driven design also drives the Agile mindset. You need collaboration, iteration. Otherwise, you can't really build complicated things or complex things.
This should be. This is what Ron Jeffrey said in the tweet. Agile or Scrum is my main sentence is inspect and adapt. And this is what a lot of people, a lot of teams are not doing. They are not inspecting, they are just following some guidelines from management or from themselves, and they are not learning. And this learning part must come from everybody.
So I think we agree that if we want to do domain-driven design, our business needs to also be agile. I think we can agree with that, right?
Yes,
how? So why aren't? How can we why aren't they into this? Why aren't they really doing agile here? And why So I don't like to talk about DDD because then they'll attack the method. But what's going on that side? Do you have any ideas? So if we agree that this should be it, how can we change it from a engineering perspective, software engineering perspective?
Can I quickly jump into what Marco said, because I sort of was waiting for that. That's my top point on the list. I've mentioned that to at least one or two of you in the past. At every DDD conference I had at least one or two gotcha moments after some talk, some session, where I thought, what the fuck, DDD and Agile, basically that's exactly the same. And it's really, yeah, it's holistic. It's a bit more for me based on a feeling, you know. I cannot analytically describe it so well, but that's how I always felt. And Marco basically said it. It's based on the same principles, right? You see it. We already mentioned the whirlpool from Eric. That's iterations. That's what Krisztina just said. Inspect and adapt.
Yep.
Only so much design as you need, and then you test that, and then you adapt. So it's sort of, I think they probably have the same parents, the same mental parents, whatever you call it. They're stemming from the same area of void, of a happy place, where stuff is done the right way instead of the wrong way. So, and now what was the question?
So the question is, if we agree on that part, right? They try to do the same, inspect and adapt, but every time, and I've been to most corporate and even non-corporate, when it's getting implemented, the business are still on these, we need budgets for the whole year, right? So now I finally got my budget, so why are you challenging me on my ideas, kind of thing. That's what I literally hear back all the time. And that's what DD tries to solve, and I think Agile too, but every time it goes from IT, however, it never crosses over. What's the need there that's missing?
If I can jump in there, I have some ideas, because one main sort of interest of mine these days, apart from Agile and trying to be better at that, is social technical systems, as you all have heard a lot about the last few years. And I'm sort of going back and digging into the history of this, back from the Tavistock and what they did in the English coal mines and all that. And there's an interesting transition they made in the late 80s, early 80s. I can't remember his name exactly now, but I can dig it up and post it later. But he introduced a new concept to the social technical system called deliberation, in a way to distinguish between the factory floor that we had before, the sort of Tayloristic way of working, right? This sort of conveyor belt kind of thing, and into more knowledge work. And for knowledge work, that sort of pipe doesn't work anymore. You have to get people together, and they have to deliberate. They have to discuss, have to collaborate. So I think this is the transition that many companies haven't taken yet. At least the enterprises I've worked in, they are old. They have sort of the old way of doing stuff. They are hierarchical. They are, I won't say it's scientific management, because the top leadership don't know what goes on the factory floor at all. They don't understand it necessarily even. So it's not like that top down, but still it's order from the top, and it's sort of control from the top. And to make that transition, you also need to sort of even pivot your company, maybe even get rid of that hierarchy and put product teams.
Yeah,
that's what he says as well. I can't remember his name, but I tried to figure out what it was. Is you have to have this team that deliberates, that creates this new. That's the knowledge work way of working now. And I think Agile and DDD fits perfectly in that world.
Yeah. So, yeah, go on, Krisztina.
I think an Agile development mindset doesn't have place for any middle management. And maybe surely the people are feeling this, because what they do, it would be cool to have it in team, to have it as business owner, as stakeholder, as knowledge transfer, but not as a manager. They are not important anymore, because if we discuss together what to do, how to design a product, how to bring the product, what to try it out, what to measure, and we build it and deliver it. Why do we are self-organized, in other words. Why do we need a middle management? And very less people would let go the power and saying, okay, I come to you and your team and we are doing it together.
So I have a slight problem with that part. We don't need middle management. We might not need a lot of middle management, but who decides on, let's say you're in a big corporate, you have these small parts, real proper domains of a bank, for instance. Who decides the strategy on that level? That's usually middle management at this part, right? They decide how are we making sure these autonomous teams who have freedom are working together. How are they supported in the correct way? But how is that without the middle management? Just playing a bit of devil's advocate also here.
Yeah, I want to answer that. I think middle management is the wrong metaphor here. You can use the classical middle managers for that role, but if you look at a socio-technical system as it is designed, so you have your context maps, you have your different cores and supporting domains, there's relationships and natures of relationships in between. In such a world, you need people for all those socio-technical roles. So you have people that only know the stuff inside a bubble, inside a bounded context, and that really know it well. You know how some people work on the interaction between two or multiple contexts, and some people have an overview over the whole system as a whole and check if it's still sane and works. And there is no middle. You have different roles, and they are all equally important. Yeah. And if you have people who are classical middle managers and they can work as interaction managers or as people who orchestrate the system, that is a great job transition. And I have a very fitting comment here from John Connolly. He says, as you mentioned, Kenny, when Agile is used to organize a factory of code, right? When we just put out features there and we deny a sustainable platform for the whole thing, then managers just mitigate the pressure by using Agile and putting the production onto the developers, and that's their problem now. So Agile is used as another control tool, if I could correctly, John. And I think that's the problem. It's like taking Agile as a tool to manage instead of as a mindset, as a philosophy behind how you structure your whole company.
Yeah. And see where, sorry, Kenny, see where this whole problems are coming from. I think partially John said it, and I guess you all know the tweet I have pinned on Twitter for since March or so, which is about culture and leadership of companies, which enable or disable all the good or bad things. And then I think middle management basically generally structure how much levels of management you have and how exactly it's structured does not matter so much unless it's completely not mapping or not matching basically in our social technical system the software we have. But generally this does not harm as much as if the culture and the leadership is just not what we call agile and is not matching basically to work in that way. So for me the answer, just one more sentence to our basically the question that we're basically, which is the topic for this virtual meetup, is culture and leadership actually can enable or basically not enable Agile and DDD, because if you have a hierarchical micromanagement, command and control, type X, or everybody's lazy and I need a carrot or I need to punish somebody, all this crap, then nothing good will happen, not Agile and not DDD. It will all not work, and the other way around.
They could seem to work, and this is what developers should stop, and not playing Agile and playing DDD, because it is not right.
Should that be your answer? So let's say you wake up now, as I think Anton, you did a while back, they were trying out SAFe and you were like, oh, should we just stop and what should we do when we find ourselves in that situation where you find out, I know that it really works, I know DDD and I know Agile really well or good, that it works, but my manager is in command and control. What would you do?
We try basically exactly what sort of happened to me. I think we try the best we can in the position we have to explain the problem, to show the problem, to suggest solutions. And then either, somebody will understand that, buy that, and it's moving in the right direction. Or in my case, the opposite happens. You get in a lot of trouble, and that's the last signal you need as whatever your role is, to just basically run. Because in such a company where you give good but critical input, and then there is pressure, there is danger, there is punishment, whatever, you can't just run. You can't help such a company in the position in which you are. But hopefully it will not so often be work in that way, but in a more positive one, right?
Yeah. I would say that depends. Thanks for that. It took us only half an hour to get there. But, it depends on the communication problem that you're having. No matter how command and control a company is or how hostile the communication, if you as a programmer go to your middle management or to your management and you want to explain DDD to them and socio-technical structures, and that's not the level of complexity they understand so far, or they understand but they don't want it to be that way, then educating them in a holistic way, collaboratively, is the wrong language. I've learned this very painfully through my colleague Roman. He introduced me to spiral dynamics, which is about levels of complexity that grow in a spiral, basically. You always go from a level of, I'm ego-focused, do something for me, until the world becomes more complex. Then I need to focus on the group, and this goes back and forth in an upward spiral. Interesting book.
You see it in the world now, right?
We're
back to the spiral of control.
Yes. So, but if you are in a level of complexity in your mindset where you are thinking that we as a holistic group, as a worldwide learning community, we need to educate and evolve together to make the world a better place, and you try to impose this communication and idea structure on people who try to get into the next level of their career by becoming the better leader in a hierarchy, then you're not speaking their language, and that doesn't work. If you find the indulgence, or if you find the ability to speak to them in their language, it's still a long journey, because they need to understand the complexity at some point. They need to go through this learning process. So it's not immediate. It takes months or years, but there's a chance you can move past the issues. But you can also say it's not your job to do that, or not your motivation. So you can also find a company that is already where you want to be. But that's a choice you can actively make. You can say, I'm suffering on the one hand, but helping on the other hand.
Totally agree, Marco. Where I'm at the moment, I'm sort of hired as a solution architect for projects. So working against the system is sort of what I've started doing lately. And the thing is that you have to find some agents in the hierarchy that you can talk to and discuss this with, and put ideas and introduce them to a new way of working. And if people do that all over the place, at some point things will change. And in the company I'm at, it is actually seems that it's working. They do some pilots now for cross-functional teams, so we'll see how that works out. But at least then they get buy-in from the leadership, from top leadership. So for normally you won't have a Bezos or some big CEO that comes in and say, no, we're going to work in a service-oriented way, and nothing else goes. So normally you have to work from bottom up, and then you have to find your agents up in the hierarchy that you can sort of get a good dialogue with. Okay.
And at the same time, you can start with some goals, like sprint goals, or
exactly. Small things.
Goals. So something, removing the tech wording from your day-to-day business. I think we developers are much too technical. We are talking technical. This is why POs, or I had POs, former developers, and they just said, I don't get you. This is everything is developer stuff. we scare them away. We don't give them any chance to see this DDD as a product thing and not a developer thing.
Yeah, but a question, Krisztina, and to all of you, don't you also know the situation where a PO, for example, basically already puts implementation hints or half of the solution of a possible solution into the story? I know that
they always do that.
But I overhear this because last time happened to me, I think 5 years ago. The word is really complex, and maybe I'm lucky, but I never, not really had POs. I have CTOs and micromanagers doing this, coming to a planning or something, a refinement, and he had already the column name in the head. You put this column there, and then it's solved. And we just were sitting there. What do you want to achieve? Oh, I tell you later. Yeah. So dismissed. We let him go because he can do it. Okay, then it's his feature, but we can oppose this somehow and discuss this and tell him why it's not okay. So I don't think this is. I think it's a bigger problem. Why? So not really. Only a few POs are coming to Kandinsky. This is what Mark I told you 2 years ago. We have to make this. We need a DDD book without any technical words, because it is.
I've heard Paul Reiner said that. DDD for product owners, for instance.
Yeah. This is what we need somehow. This is what I hoped with this session too. I wrote two of my ex-POs to be there. Maybe they are in the YouTube channel because we need them. We are only the half part of this struggle.
Sophia also sort of started or is moving that with her famous aggregates for non-technical people. And I want to mention that I gave the right answer, not Marco. His explanation was only C-like. Joke aside, yeah, I totally agree. But it even getting a lot of POs onto our side, that sounds wrong. So we make them friends of DDD and understand it more. I think that's not enough. I will always come back to culture and leadership. Those people who make decisions, those people need to understand that and really buy that and help us moving this direction. Otherwise, every PO, as every developer, will always just run against walls.
Yeah,
and I'd like to go into something I've heard today, which is called the just world bias or hypothesis. You heard about it?
No.
It goes into that the world will balances out itself. So if you hope that, so for instance, karma is a just world hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just think the management will get what they deserve by making this decision, that would be a just world bias, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they will see that it will fail, these kind of things. So that goes into a bit more of my stoic mentality, where I think if I cannot change the outer world. So that's what you did, Anton. At some point, you need to make the decision, am I okay here or not, and move on. And what I usually don't understand is that a lot of developers are actually in a privileged, mostly, not all, but most are in a privileged situation where a lot of recruiters are looking for you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So I have a question from John Connolly. He said, how do each of you connect the appropriate model aspect to the story to ensure the model is actively worked? Or worked on, I think he means.
Yeah, good point. I try to sort of illustrate that when I do these user story mapping exercises or training sessions, is that when you sort of tell a story from a user perspective and sort of figure out what you're going to solve, and then you figure out, okay, maybe I should solve some of it first and put something off. Maybe I should prioritize something, and okay, let's test this hypothesis and just make a slice of that thing that you're going to make. In that sense, it's easy to fall into the trap to say, okay, we create a model for that slice only. But if you work in like 2 week sprint plan and one slice is 2 weeks, for example, then you have to think more holistically. So I think it forces you into create models that are adaptive somehow. That's sort of where I'm at the moment. I think it forces you to think differently about your models. You don't fall in love with them, say at least, because you know they will change. There will be new requirements and there's stuff coming up later on. And yeah, so I think you model differently somehow.
Yeah, you actually model from your actual knowledge, and we are open for changes. One thing is sure, it will change.
Yeah. And that is one of the great agile principles I think people miss, is that a late requirement is a business opportunity, right? It's a business advantage. Yeah. So we shouldn't push things off. Say, oh no, we haven't got time for that requirement. Don't come and mess with us. We had a big plan. We should follow that now. So
yeah, it's the sunk cost fallacy, right?
Sorry.
It's the sunk cost fallacy. Yeah, exactly. I've seen it happen with Post-its, by the way, on an event storm. Yeah. People hate refactoring their pre-made stickies. So can you imagine a big project?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Shit just. So yeah, I what I observed myself, and maybe you've seen this also, is Abiba gave some great talks about certainty. And what I usually see from upper management or the management layer is we are thrived by KPIs, right? That they need to succeed this, or return of investment and all these things. And it's all about certainty. And when you go to inspect and adapt, when you go to real agile, there's a lot of uncertainty, which is okay. It's fine. It's the world we live in. So isn't that the core of the problem we need to look after? How can we how can we manage uncertainty?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think if you already knew all the answers, your product is not needed anymore.
Yeah,
because somebody else did it already. This is what I learned, that it's not only we developer, not only DDD, not only a place to work, but if this product, if this experiment doesn't work out because it's not a market there, or it's already took by other products, if I know everything, then why I am here? Why should I write line of codes if it's already somebody else did it?
Yeah, I think most agile businesses, as well as domain-driven businesses, they do not sell a product. They sell the promise that the product grows into the need all the time.
Yeah,
exactly.
So
we just did waterfall.
Yeah, but
well, that's what
some of the problems that Dogscom has, is that you treat it like it's agile and it's mini waterfalls, and there's no adaptability really. Because you plan just increments, but it's not increments, it's iterations really. So so you don't increment, you just put on stuff, feature factory, and then you say, oh, this is may not work in the market. No, don't change that. We have got money for this. We have to finish this, and
But it's not agile. It's not dark agile. It's not agile at all. It's a big mistake to use this word. And I'm fighting it just like it depends, because agile is not bad. Agile is not something opposing us. There are a lot of people who are not meaning it and not thinking about this. There's real agile. We have to put the word real before it to know what we are talking about. It's,
and in 5 years, it will be real agile.
Yeah.
We just need to define our ubiquitous language here.
Yeah, exactly.
So going back to my final question, and I'll start off here. What can you do tomorrow, right? If you want to change this, I have this technique called, well, I don't have, but I use this technique, and other called this guerrilla event storming or guerrilla modeling. If people don't want to collaborate with me, I'll just show them and try to show them examples like, do you mean this? Or actually make mistakes, right? That's what you always say too, Marco. Try to make, and Alberto says it too, try to make a mistake and people will come. So it's not build it and people will come, but actually make a mistake, people will come.
I have to go to it depends again. It totally depends on the people you work with.
True.
I just said, let's do guerrilla event storming in the past, and that was my go-to way. But I realized there are people where event storming is the wrong approach because they communicate.
But then I use example mapping, for instance.
Yeah, so the answer to your question, what do you do differently tomorrow, is I want to become better at understanding what communication people need and then learn the tools necessary to help them to get on the path to their own journey, to get to the mindset of DDD and Agile at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, start asking questions, just the simplest, dumbest question, like, for example, like I did, why don't we have goals for the sprints? And start thinking, we discussed in a team, you could say we deliver X number of story points. That doesn't sound like a goal, really. It should be a business goal. And then you sort of discussion starts rolling, and then people see that, oh, maybe there's something we can change here. So, I mean, the last thing we did after the last retrospective, we decided to drop the stand-ups, for example. Just see how that works. Just to illustrate because it doesn't give us anything. It's just an annoyance. So let's see how that works. And so try challenge ideas and set ideas in your company. That goes for both Agile and DDD.
So challenge the obvious.
Yeah, because and don't assume that everybody thinks that this is okay, because they don't necessarily do. You're probably not the only person in the company that thinks this is not working. So yeah, find your agents. That's my.
Anton?
Yeah. Anything guerrilla, guerrilla is also good, and guerrilla sort of makes sense for me. I was thinking, it depends so much on in which environment you're in, which ecosystem. But let's say in the company I worked for, there was a phase at least where Scrum was sort of set. The chief Scrum Master said things like, you have to prove that you deliver in Scrum, and then you are allowed to basically do something that is not Scrum, like lean Kanban, which is, no comment. So sometimes if you're in an environment where you really need and want to change the stuff, you might be able to ask for one iteration or two to experiment. Maybe when in a phase where it's not like everybody's underwater and everything is on fire, you can probably say, hey, can we try a sprint or whatever for a certain of time to do something differently? And then you whoever, decider, manager, have a look at that and see if you like it. I mean, this can fail. For some reason you can mess it up, and then obviously the impression will be, hey, this sucks. But yeah, if you don't try, you have already lost, right?
Yeah. Be the change you want to see. It's like good saying.
Yeah. Krisztina?
My strategy is like Marcos, I think, Trond. Today I was staying before the board, and I saw a lot of tasks in one column, and I asked, why are all of them there? And what happens if one comes back, it was in the review? And I just let this question sit. And I saw the people, how they are thinking, and all of them were thinking, okay, this is wrong, we should change it. But it's enough for a starter, and to see who is on which side, how unhappy they are, how happy they are. If everybody's happy, I don't need to change things. Not yet, or I don't know. And the other part is I have such a luck. Everybody wants to do event storming in my new company. So I don't have to make any guerrilla stuff. I just have to learn more about the business because I'm 2 days there now. But this and product goal. This is a product goal I also asked today for the, not product goal, sprint goal. I was also asking today for the sprint goal. I just wanted to know if it's one set or exists. And it's enough to make the people thinking and showing what they would like to have. Small steps.
Actually, just to end on another recommendation, I said we're going to try stopping doing stand-ups, but also our squad, because of course we're doing Spotify model, right? So it's way too big. We know this because the stand-up took forever and never managed to get within those 50 minutes time box. So we have decided now in the next iteration, because when we discussed the goals, we mentioned, okay, we see at least 3 goals. That's what we ended up with. All right, maybe we are 3 teams within this team. Maybe. So next time we're going to try to split up and have small teams and see how that works. Still going to be in the squad, so we're not going to affect anybody else, but we're going to try it internally and see. Because I think squad should be like less than a handful. It should be 3, 4.
Cool.
So we'll see how that goes.
Good tip. Marco, do you have anything to add? What would you do differently?
I think I started with saying what I would do differently. I'm working on learning to communicate as the people need communication instead of what I think the best solution is.
Yeah.
So my initial approach is always go for event storming, collaborate on modeling, understand what people actually, what goal they have, what the bottleneck in the process is. And with the whole system thinking approach, Kinevin and all those things, that's my mindset. And I usually like, oh, you have a problem. Here's a bunch of tools. Now let's start working on that. And then you find someone who says, no, we always did it this way. And now we do the safe release train. So you realize you found people that you need to communicate with differently. And I'm trying to find my way through the whole spiral dynamic spiral, what people do need, what kind of motivation to get on their own journey. And
exactly.
Getting my own ego back down is my work at the moment.
I surely never would try anymore to fight something, but to go with them. To have this journey together and not to change or having the goal to change people or processes, sure, but not people, but to get them in this team. And this is what I meant with the managers too. It's not the other side. We should have all the same side. To extend the borders of the team.
Yes,
cool.
Yeah, so you can't change other people. You can only change yourself, right? Yeah. And then work together with them as good as possible.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So what I hear is, what can we do tomorrow is change, inspect, adapt.
Yeah.
Right. Make.
Sounds very agile, doesn't it?
Sounds agile. Challenge the obvious.
Yeah.
Try to experiment a lot. Listen to the communication, right? And I think, does domain-driven design approach need agile? Yeah, they're actually similar to each other. They try to do the similar thing.
And we killed waterfall.
Yeah, it's still not bad. So that was it for tonight. We have no further questions, I see. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, sure did. Thank you again for putting it together. And Marco?
Thank you.
Anytime. And if you want to do the same, just contact us on Twitter, on the virtual DDD Twitter tag. We'll reply. We also have a great website where you can go to and email us. If you have ideas, feedback, let us know. And until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.
Nice evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.